So I've been playing through Fire Emblem Awakening on my new pre-owned new 2DS XL, and I was undecided on whether or not I wanted to do a critique on it. I didn't end up with as many notes as I would have liked to do a critique, mostly because I ended up playing it a lot on the go, with the 3DS being small, and the gameplay lending itself to quick sessions. Also, trying to get any footage on this thing would be a pain in the ass to say the least, so I ended up deciding against it. But there is a dilemma I faced that interested me enough to want to do a short video on the game. That being, the difficulty options? No, this is not some kind of twisted joke. When it comes to difficulty options in games, I have always prided myself on being extremely average. I play almost every game on normal, partially because that's what the creators intended the experience to be, and partially because harder games kick my ass. When I first got my PS4 years ago, my friend immediately brought over his copy of Bloodborne to get me to try it. I loaded it up and died repeatedly, almost immediately. It was on this day I knew I was not built for this. As the years have gone on, my literacy for the video game medium has only improved, and I've grown better to the point I now own a copy of Dark Souls to someday maybe try. This is the reason I keep buying more video games. It can't hurt me if I can't get through the entire Yakuza series first. Played on normal, of course. But this is where Fire Emblem Awakening posed an interesting question. It gave the typical easy, medium, hard options, but alongside it was an option to play with the permadeath of units or not. For those of you who might not know what Fire Emblem is a tactical RPG with a pretty generic medieval fantasy setting. Monarchy, rival empires, strong church influence, knights, magic, people turning into dragons, the whole shebang. The story matches the setting in being fairly generic fantasy fare from what I've seen. You have an army generally working with a monarch and kill the evil empire or zombie army or whatever, with most of the twists provided to keep the games fresh seemingly coming in gameplay or gimmicks, such as dual releases or 3 houses. Gameplay-wise, you control an army from a top-down perspective, moving people around the board like you're looking down at a war table. The people can develop relationships with each other by fighting together and have cute little character interactions outside of the battles, developing their characters bit by bit. And in the older Fire Emblems, permadeath wasn't an option, it was a fact of life. This was the first game in the series that was released outside of Japan to include the choice to not have it, and it raises an issue for me. I want to play games as the developer intended me to play the game, and obviously permadeath is how this series is intended to be experienced. It also adds considerably to the experience of the game, with it creating a feeling of loss in the player associated with war. If you play on permadeath, when a unit you have falls, they're gone. No more of those interactions, no more presence in the story. They're just gone, and that can hit you, especially if they're important to your playthrough. There is a reason people dedicate themselves to playing through these games with permadeath without losing a single unit. And all of this affects strategy as well. You become a lot more conservative in your strategy, tactically chipping away at enemy units' health, toying with ranges, tile advantages and enemy unit weaknesses before charging through for the death blow. You want to protect all of your units as much as possible. If you're going to put one in a dangerous position, you weigh up in your mind whether it's worth losing them or not. But if one of your units dies, you now have a choice. Do you move through the rest of the game without that character, or do you just reset and keep going again and again until you eventually clear it without losing a unit? If you're wondering what I was looking at in the last bit, there's a bit of the candle that's not melting properly, so I'm gonna rotate that now. So hopefully it does. Losing a unit feels brutal to me, which again is the point, but the cost of losing a unit is too harsh for me to want to engage with the extra effect permadeath brings in the Fire Emblem series. Losing a unit means no more of those character interactions that flesh them out a whole lot more than the generic stories do. And in some games in the series, it cuts out smaller side stories as well. The other option is simply to sink countless hours perfecting each level to escape without a loss, which, while an impressive challenge, is way too time consuming for me to feel it is worth it. RNG is a bitch in Fire Emblem games, and losing someone to a bad series of rolls feels like it happens way too often. But then, not playing on permadeath means the difficulty has now shifted, as I am playing with more units than the game is likely expecting me to have, giving me more options of how to lay out my party in each battle. To accommodate this, I felt I had to bump the difficulty up to hard, and you know what? I think it balanced out relatively nicely. I still play conservatively to survive the levels thanks to the added difficulty, but I had the flexibility to lose units without them disappearing and missing characterization for each of them, or having to constantly reset, which can get very frustrating. Finding a balance between developer intention and what works for you is difficult, and if I ever critique a game like this, I feel it is important to take into account the effects the changes away from the intent has on the storytelling experience. Fire Emblem is changed without permadeath, and it deserves credit for how it can capture the tragedy brought by war with this system, even if I didn't use it. Basically what I'm saying is that Dark Souls should have an easy mode. Thank you for watching. Like the share, subscribe button if you enjoyed it and want to see more. I know this wasn't a usual critique, but I struggled with the choice for a while and found that struggle interesting, so wanted to share my thoughts on it. That, and I just love Fire Emblem in general. The gameplay is super addicting to me, so I wanted an excuse to talk about it, even if I wasn't going to be doing a critique. There should be a more regular one coming this weekend, though, on Superhot. So look forward to that. Duskin out.